There are so many techniques you have to master before you can even dream of starting to sew your own clothes. I just don't have the sewing gene. I'm no good at it. It's just not worth learning how to sew when you can buy everything at the store for cheaper. I'd like to talk about these and a few other sewing myths in today's video. Hi, if you haven't been here before, my name is Annie and this is Historically Fashioned. So as the title and thumbnail and everything said, and as I just said, I'm repeating myself, we're going to talk about 6 common myths surrounding sewing. Now, every sewist knows that these aren't true. However, people who are just learning to sew or are interested in learning to sew sometimes have these ideas in their head that are just not, they're just not true. And they can be a real barrier to learning how to sew. So let's go ahead and let's just dive right in and get started with these 6 myths. I do have my notes in front of me because, as you know, I forget things and then I go off on a tangent like I'm doing now. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes. Okay, sewing myth number 1. You have to have the talent or the gene to sew. Absolutely not. Just like anything else, practice makes, if not perfect, it makes progress, right? No one is born just knowing how to sew. Yeah, there are some. There's this one little boy. Have you seen him? I don't know his name or anything, but oh my God, he's incredible, that kid. I'm like, holy moly. But he didn't like come out of the womb knowing how to sew. He was interested in it. His parents got him sewing lessons and he learned how to sew beautiful garments. Anyone can learn how to sew. It just takes some time and some effort, and you have to be prepared for a few failures. I mean, even when you've been sewing forever, failures happen. So when you were first learning to sew, you have to be aware that your first garment is not going to be beautiful and pretty and amazing. I mean, it might be, who knows? But you're probably gonna have to work out some fit issues, and you're probably, your seams may not be 100% straight. But the point is, you did it. You made something that you want to make, right? And the more you practice, the better you will get. Myth number 1. Myth number 2. It's not worth learning how to sew. Today's fashion is so inexpensive. You can go out, you can buy something from Shein or Temu or wherever people shop these days for, 15 bucks for an outfit, and you're ready to go. Yeah, you could do that. You absolutely could. But you're going to have some issues with it. Number 1, the fabric's going to be not great quality. The stitching's not going to be great quality. It's probably not going to fit you fantastically. And it's probably made out of polyester. Now, I will admit, I'm a bit of a fabric snob. Part of that is I am actually allergic to polyester. I put it on my body and I break out in hives. So I don't wear polyester. But there are definitely some things that are cheaper to purchase, but there are other things that are, once you learn how to sew and fit your body, they are way more cost effective to sew at home. If you want to sew a dress for a party, say, a nice dress for a party can cost you 200 bucks. I love vintage fashion. Now, I could go out and I could buy vintage fashion off of Amazon, and I have done, but I gotta say, they don't fit. It doesn't fit right. It feels constricting in places it shouldn't feel constricting. It's loose in places, others, too loose. I say sewing is 100% worth it because you get the material of your choice and you make something that's one of a kind. Nobody else has it out there. Nobody else has it, which is awesome. And you get something that fits great and you feel amazing in. You're not tugging it down. You're not scratching. You're not itching. So sewing for me is 100% worth it. Now, there are certain things I just don't sew. I don't sew tank tops. Why would I bother when I can go and buy a tank top at Target or Old Navy, for $5 to $10? I can't make that at home. that quickly or that inexpensively. So I buy those things. But again, they have to be, no polyester. Makes me itch just thinking about it. So, yes, sewing is 100% worth it. So that myth is busted. Sewing myth number 3. You have to master a lot of techniques before you can even start sewing. Again, no, 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 no. I told the story before, so I'm not going to tell it too much. I did not know how to sew when I sewed my first garment, a costume for my kid. It turned out wonky. She loved it anyways. You can sew anything. And today, we have so many resources available. I mean, in order to start sewing, all you need is really three things. Maybe 4. You might want a sewing machine, just to speed the process up a little bit. But you need a good pattern that has great instructions. There are so many indie patterns out there now that have fabulous instructions, and a lot of them have sew-alongs, so you can just sew right along with the creator, and you can take it step by step, take it slow, take it easy, and just go for it. That's number 1. Number 2, I like to have a good sewing book. Now, my favorite, like, all-in resource for having like a physical book is the Reader's Digest Guide to Sewing, I think is what it's called. I'll put the exact title here and I'll link it down in the description below. But it is a great book when you just want to look something up quickly. You want to look up, oh, do I need to clip this curve? Do I need to notch this curve? It's a great book for that. I think it also has a little bit on fitting, stuff like that, basic terminology. Wonderful book. And I think one of the most invaluable resources is signing up for YouTube University. That's right. Right here on YouTube, there are so many amazing tutorials that can teach you how to do anything. So, not knowing how to sew or do a technique should not be a barrier to learning or diving right in and just getting started. I mean, there's no reason you have to start with a pillow or a tote bag unless you want to, if that's fine. Me, those are not my style, those are boring, and they turn me off of sewing. In fact, when my mom tried to teach me how to sew when I was a kid, that's what she tried to teach me with, and it didn't take. It wasn't until my kiddo wanted a costume that I couldn't purchase that I was like, I'm going to do this. And I fell in love. So, again, you can sew anything. If you want to sew a dress to start with, sew a dress. If you want to sew a corset, sew a corset. It doesn't matter what it is that you start with. Again, find a good pattern that has some sew-alongs possibly with it. Go to YouTube University, and if you want, you can have that physical book. That was myth number 3 again. Busted. No. Okay. Myth number 4. You have to have an expensive, fancy machine with all the stitches in order to start sewing. That is 100% false. 100%. I mean, think of how many centuries people were sewing, millennia even. People were sewing their own clothes before the sewing machine has been invented. I mean, the sewing machine is a relatively new invention, only within the last like 200 years or so. So look at those 18th century court gowns. Those were all sewn by hand. Those fully boned stays, all sewn by hand. I mean, you can do amazing things with just a needle and thread. But if you want a sewing machine, which most of us do because it definitely speeds up the process, there is no reason you need to go out and get a fancy one. In fact, I would advise against it. What if you don't actually enjoy sewing? You don't want to have spent, several hundred to thousands of dollars on a sewing machine that you're then going to get rid of. Get yourself a good vintage sewing machine. I love vintage machines for many reasons. Number one, they are easy to service at home. There are often YouTube videos on how to service them. You can take them down to your local sewing machine shop and they can service them for you if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself. And you can often pick them up for very, very little money or even free. All you need in your sewing machine, really, if you're just going to start with wovens, all you need is a straight stitch. And I would argue that's all you need for stretch fabrics as well. Sorry, I forgot what they were called. For stretch fabrics as well, you just need a machine that goes straight. So I have several vintage machines. I've got a couple of them behind me. This one here is my Singer hand crank. This machine only goes in a straight line. It does not go backwards. It does not zigzag side to side. It sews in a straight line. And that's all you need in order to sew. That's it. You need something that's going to form a nice stitch and go straight. I have over here a fancier vintage machine. This one is from the 70s. This is my Elna SU machine. Like I say, this one is fancier. It does have the straight stitch. It does go backwards, which is nice. I'm not going to lie. It's nice, but not necessary. It's got several built-in zigzag stitches as well as cams, and it has a no-turn buttonhole foot with it. So I do love this machine. It's fantastic. I use it all the time. But guess what? I've sewed entire garments on this machine as well as my treadle machine, which again goes forward. My Singer Featherweight, hugely popular. Those ones are expensive. They're going to cost you a pretty penny. Only goes straight, forward, and it goes backwards as well, which again, nice to have. But really all you need is something that goes straight ahead, and you can pick up a good vintage machine with all metal parts that's going to last you a lifetime and be able to pass down to someone else when you're done with it. And you, like I said, you can often pick them up for free or very, very little money. So you don't need that fancy machine. Get yourself a good vintage machine and go for it. Myth number 5. Now this one is a big one as far as I'm concerned. You can always tell when something is homemade. I hear this a lot. And yes, I will not lie. My first garment definitely looked homemade. But that's because I skipped a very, very, very important step. This is the step that is going to take your clothes from looking homemade to handmade, which I think is far superior than shop made. But that's just me. And that is pressing. Pressing is vital. It is the one biggest tip anyone can give you to elevate your sewing. It is pressing your seams after you've sewn them. So, after you've sewn a seam, before you sew another seam that's going to intersect, like say a seam here. I've got a side seam here, I've got a side seam here, I've got a waist seam here. Before I sew these two together at the waist, I want to press these seams open. That's going to allow them to lie flat and nice and not look all wavy and wobbly. It's going to press out any slight puckers you may have gotten in your fabric, and it's going to be a beautiful canvas for joining the two together. So pressing is key. I was guilty of it. I skipped pressing. It was not good. Now, obviously, there are some fabrics that are difficult to press. Polyester, you have to be careful with. You're gonna melt it if you go in with a too hot iron. Use your press cloth. That'll help, and use a low setting. And things like velvet and things like that can also be difficult to press, but they're not impossible. For velvet, you want to get a scrap of your velvet, put it pile to pile so that they're together, and then lightly hover your iron over with some steam, and then I like to you can finger press. I have a needle board which I picked up for dirt cheap at my favorite thrift shop, so I use that when I press velvet or cotton velvets because I have it, but they can be very expensive. So putting another piece of, a scrap piece of that fabric face to face, and you got it. You can do that. You can also finger press some things if you can't press them with an iron. Some vinyls and stuff like that. You want to use a finger press or one of those little roly thingies to press it out flat. But pressing is vital. And then the last tip I have for you is not tip. Why do I say tip? The last myth I have today is that sewing is expensive. Now, this one can be true, I'm not going to lie, but sewing is only as expensive as you want it to be. Okay, what I mean by that is, again, you don't need to buy that expensive sewing machine. There are a few basic tools you need. You need a good iron. I prefer my gravity feed iron because I don't have problems with it spitting and making a mess. However, for years I sewed with a really, really inexpensive Sunbeam iron that I picked up probably at like Kmart because it was like before Target was a thing. So you don't need expensive tools. You don't need expensive fabric. Yes, new fabric can be very expensive. However, there's lots of sources for inexpensive fabric. You can use fabric that you thrift. You might have a shop like I do that specializes in sewing and craft supplies where you can get fabric by the pound, super, super cheap, great for practicing on, for making things that you can actually wear, put on your body, that it cost you hardly anything. You can also get fabric for free. You might know somebody who used to sew, that doesn't sew anymore, that is giving away stuff. Heck, you might have old bed sheets in your closet that maybe are getting a little thin. You gotta kind of cut around the thin spots, but or that you've had for a while. Maybe they have a couple stains on them. Wash them up, sew something, cut around those stains. That fabric costs you nothing. You're going to need some good thread, obviously, and if you're in the States, you can't go out to Joann's and buy that anymore. So I'm going to plug Wawalk here again. Wawalk is the best place for thread, notions, all of that stuff. Go there. 100% not sponsored. They don't know I exist. I have like 70 subscribers, so clearly not sponsored. But very inexpensive thread. Buy yourself some black, some white, maybe some gray or cream if those are the colors you use, and just get started. So, yeah, that is everything for today. If you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. And you can find me occasionally on Instagram at historically fashioned. It's the same thing that I am here. And until next time, wherever you are in the world, I hope that you find some time to sit down and make something beautiful. Have a fabulous day. Bye.